Hey, my name is Dwight Bernier. I'm the X29 Canada Network Director, and I'm so glad to be with you. I wish we could be together in person, but like you, almost everything that we were planning on doing got canceled. So we have many conferences lined up, including our big national conference, and that just got scrapped. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to keep the conversation going and moving forward in regards to church planning, especially in Canada. And so Acts 29 Canada is part of a larger network called Acts 29. Acts 29 is comprised of 11 at this moment, 11 different networks. There are a lot of emerging networks and things that are very embryonic around the world. But it's so exciting to be connected to something that's not just here in Canada, but is elsewhere, but also allows us to focus in on Canada. So I'm so glad that you're with us. Hopefully you've been tracking with us throughout our series. So far we've looked at the initial calling to plant churches, and we looked at Moses and some of the things going on in his life. We looked at the gospel, and now we're focusing in on leaders, and why it's so important to be focused on leaders. So I just want to draw your attention quickly, though, to acts29canada.com/the calling. On that site, you're gonna see all kinds of resources. All the videos will be up there after we're done. We have a booklet on there that you could actually download now to follow along with certain questions. And there's a form on there as well that you can fill out if you're interested in training, coaching, support, assessment, you want to talk or book an appointment with an Acts 29 planter, pastor. Everything is there. So if you want to, you can go on there now or later and fill that out, and someone will be in touch with you right away. We really want to keep the focus on church planting and the Lord Jesus and what he's doing moving forward. So let's get into our session for today. Really, it's on leadership. And I received this wisdom before moving to Montreal to plant Church 21, the church that my wife and I planted. And one of the things that we were told, and wisely so, is that you need to be focused on leaders. You need to be focused on leaders. And not just how do we plant a church, how do we get people to meet Jesus, and I know theologically like that statement's loaded, but how do we help people understand who Jesus is and what he's done and respond to him? But how do we not just do that? But how do we create a culture where we're developing leaders, and those leaders are developing leaders, and those leaders are developing leaders, and we're seeing really this generational leadership pipeline that is able to happen. And I don't mean generational from the more well-seasoned people down to the infants, though that's important to think through as well. But I mean that you have a group of disciples that you're forming, and they're forming disciples, and they're forming disciples, and they're forming disciples. And this is significant growth. This is where significant growth actually starts to happen. So planting a church requires that you have leaders, unless you want to plant a church where you are the one that is needed for everything. Now, you might enjoy that at first. It might feel really good, especially if you don't feel needed or wanted in different realms in life. It might feel good to feel needed and wanted, but after a time, it's going to get very burdensome. And in fact, I would argue that I don't think that you were ever intended to carry that burden on your own. I know that there are some pastors in small towns, small churches where they're forced, in a sense, to do a lot themselves. But even in those situations, there are opportunities for them to be able to train and equip and delegate and give away things so that other people can be using their gifts in those contexts. So as you're thinking about planting a church, or as you're just planting a church, or as you're thinking about replanting or doing something with your current church plant, you need to be thinking about leaders and how you're forming them. See, leadership is essential to making disciples, isn't it? Absolutely essential. This is what Jesus told his disciples as he was leaving. We know the Great Commission. The Great Commission isn't only focused on evangelism, it's focused on leadership development, to teach them all that I have taught you, right? All that I've commanded you. Go and teach that, and then baptize them. Yes. So we have this idea of new life and then continued growth. And by teaching them all that I've taught you, this means that you're going to reproduce yourself in other people, because that's what Jesus was doing. So here's my push, is that I think that as you're planting a church, you should be spending almost all of your time with two groups of people. Now, you can disagree with me, and that's fine. Doesn't matter. I'm on a camera, and so I don't even know that you're disagreeing with me. But I think that you should focus your energy on two different groups. First is potential leaders. Second is non-Christians. Why would I say that? If you're focusing your time on leaders and non-Christians, well, the non-Christians, by God's grace, they're going to come to understand who Jesus is and submit their life to him, and they'll become followers of him. But how are you going to lead all those people if that continues to happen? Well, you're going to need leaders. And so if you're focused on leaders, then you're creating and developing people who will be able to actually take care of the church. And so as you're focusing in on non-Christians and on potential leaders, the church is going to continue to be able to grow, and those leaders are going to be able to take care of those people who are in the middle. And usually leaders focus all their time and attention on that group in the middle because they're there. They're the church. And they're present. And I'm not saying don't shepherd the people and care for the people that God has brought to you. Not saying that. But help other people to be able to shepherd them as well, so that you're sharing in the burden, that it's not you 5 years, well, let's back up. 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years being burnt out by the work that God has actually called you to. But instead you have this little army. You have this little group of leaders that are tracking with you and are helping you to shepherd other people well. So the question is, why must one of your first tasks be to develop a community of leaders? Why must one of your first tasks in planting be to develop a community of leaders? And I want to give you 5 reasons. 5 reasons. Number one is that there are different gifts. There are different gifts. Let me read to you 1 Corinthians 12, verses 17 through 20. 1 Corinthians. Now, I'm using this Bible, right? Not just the phone. I would say phones are so helpful. I love them. I love the scriptures on them. But I think that as we're discipling people and making leaders, we need to have hard copies of the Bible out as well, because as you're using things digitally, it's so easy not to remember where things are. You can't feel your way through. You're trying to search and destroy to find texts on different things. And so anyway, personal opinion, you can do whatever you want. But 1 Corinthians 12, verses 17 through 20 says this: if the whole body were an eye, where would be the sense of hearing? If the whole body were an ear, where would be the sense of smell? But as it is, God arranged the members in the body, each one of them as he chose. If all were a single member, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, yet one body. Here's the thing. If you have an apostolic gifting, if you have the gift to start new things, if you have the gift to be able to plant churches, I don't know what term you're comfortable with. I use apostolic gifting, but some people don't like that. Anyway, if you have this gifting, this means that you have a bit of all of the gifts. You have a bit of all of the gifts. You don't have all the gifts. Only Jesus had all the gifts, but you have a bit of all of them. But here's the thing. You're usually the master of none. You can do a lot of things up to 80%, but then you're never the expert. You can't get that last 20% polished in anything. And so as you're thinking about planting, you're going to need to look for the gifts of God in other people. And you're going to need to be looking for potential, not just what's on the surface. What can you draw out of people, and how can you help them to grow in their gifting and their leadership abilities? You see, the church planter, the lead planting couple, they don't need to be the most gifted. We think that these people are like superheroes, and we're sending them out into this disastrous city to go and plant a church, and they need to be a superhero to accomplish the task, and that's just not reality. What they need to be doing, what we need to be doing as we're thinking about planting a church, is we need to keep looking and leveraging the gifts that God has given to his church for his mission. This is so important. And yet we neglect this because we're so focused on accomplishing the task of putting this thing together. But we should be looking around for people and the gifts that they have and that they can bring. One of the reasons that we don't leverage the gifts of other people is because we're insecure. Well, what are people going to do if there's a better preacher or a better accountant or a better graphic designer or a better singer? Are people going to follow them? We have to deal with our insecurity. We have to deal with that with the gospel, which we heard about last week in the second session. But are you secure? Are you secure in Christ to allow for those more gifted than you to flourish and shine? But what gifts do you have? What gifts do you have? What gifts do you bring to the table? And then what are the gifts that lack? What are the gifts that are lacking if it's just you leading? If it's just you and your wife if you're married. What gifts are lacking? And what do you need to be on the lookout for? The second reason why one of your first tasks need to be to develop a community of leaders is to have geographical saturation. Geographical saturation. Listen to what Paul wrote to Titus. Titus 1, verse 5. This is why I left you in Crete, so that you might put what remained into order and appoint elders in every town as I directed you. Every town. Paul wasn't just focused on one place. He wanted the gospel to make it into all of the places, and that required not just Titus. That required many, many people. And so the focus was to be developing this group of elders that would help saturate Crete. Here's the reality, is that you can't be everywhere. Just like with the gifts thing, you can't do everything. The reality is you can't be everywhere. I know that when you're planting a church, you're going to try to be at all the birthday parties, all the weddings, all the ceremonies, all the graduations, all the baby dedication. Like, you're going to try and be everywhere, but the reality is that you have limits. You have limits, and if you want to see the gospel go beyond your limits, what you are able to do as a human being, you are not Jesus, remember? You are not Jesus. Jesus wants to work through you. And if you're going to be everywhere, you're going to have to do that through other people. You see, everywhere doesn't need you, and everywhere doesn't even necessarily want you. And that's a good thing. But the gospel needs to keep moving forward. So our idea in saturating places is that we develop and release, develop and release, develop and release. And this is such a painful thing, such a painful thing. But you're going to have to come to grips with, if you're going to see gospel saturation happen, you're going to let go and send out your most gifted. You're going to send out the people that you like the most. You're going to send out people that you don't like the most too. But primarily you're going to send out the people who seem just indispensable. And yet you're going to have to let them go for the good of the gospel. Do you know how to develop leaders? If you don't know how to develop elders, we have a track for that. We would love to help you to learn how to do that and to put that into place within your church plant right away. The third reason why one of your first tasks must be to develop a community of leaders is that you have blind spots. You have blind spots. I know you don't think you do, but that's because you do and you don't see it. Listen to Galatians. I'm sure you're familiar with this text. Galatians 2:11-14. But when Cephas came to Antioch, Peter, I opposed him to his face because he stood condemned. For before certain men came from James, he was eating with the Gentiles. But when they came, he drew back and separated himself, fearing the circumcision party. And the rest of the Jews acted hypocritically along with him, so that even Barnabas was led astray by their hypocrisy. But when I saw that their conduct was not in step with the truth of the gospel, I said to Cephas before them all, if you, though a Jew, live like a Gentile and not like a Jew, how can you force the Gentiles to live like Jews? Peter had this incredible vision of this meat sheet coming down from heaven, raining bacon, right? Peter understood clearly. He was supposed to be reaching Gentiles as well. But then he goes back. He goes back to living his old way. And Paul sees it. And what does Paul do? He calls him out on it. This has become a blind spot for Peter. You see, you need people who love you and who love the gospel so much that they are willing to take a chance on addressing issues in your life. You need people around you from the beginning that will help you see where you are off. You need these people. You probably don't think you do. You probably think that you are A-okay, that you are fine. But the reality is that you have so many blind spots now, and you're going to have so many more later. And God is gifting you with people to help you see where you are out of line with the gospel. And if you've seen where you are out of line with the gospel, this question is pertinent. Is it because you saw it, or is it because someone else shared it with you? I think almost every place that I've been out of line with the gospel that someone has been so kind to share with me, It's been such a gift. It doesn't feel like a gift. It feels like a failure. But yet it truly is a gift when someone helps you understand that. You see, we have the ability and the propensity to drive the church into the ditch. We plant it, looks so beautiful, and then we love it so much that we just squeeze it to death. Are there people around you that aren't just yes people? Are there people that are part of your church plant that are going to tell you exactly what they think, and not in an arrogant, mean, brash way, but tell you exactly what's going on in a way that they want to speak truth and love and build you up? You need these people around you. You need to have friends. And maybe you need this outside of your church as well. I do. I have people outside of the church that are my friends that are helping me see some of these areas that I'm out of line with the gospel at times. The fourth reason is that you're going to die. You're going to die. Do you remember the account where Moses is sitting and his father-in-law Jethro comes for a visit, and Jethro sees what's going on, and Moses is sitting all day long judging the things that are going on. Like, Moses is taking care of millions of people. He is the only judge. He is the only representative of God in the midst of all these people. And Jethro just says, Moses, you are going to die. And then he gives him a leadership strategy. You need to set in place leaders over tens, over hundreds, and over thousands. And I remember before planting Church 21, that was the design, was that we were going to have leaders over tens, over hundreds, and if the Lord allowed, thousands are a problem. They're a problem. Those of you who are pastoring, the tens are like, if I could just get to 1,000, that'd be amazing. But if you get to 1,000, I know people that have thousands, and the issues that they deal with are so frustrating. And we think, it would be so amazing over there, but it's not amazing over there. It's just as hard as it is here, if not harder. So don't envy where someone else is, because God has put them in that place for this time, for a specific purpose. Don't envy the place of another. Don't long and lust after ministry roles that someone else has been given. But I'm digressing at this point. But the reality is you are going to die. And you will die, you will burn yourself out if you lead in such a way that you are the only one leading. If you don't have other people walking with you, running with you, you won't be able to lead it all yourself. You might get it to 50 people, 100 people, 150, but if it goes beyond that, sociologically, you are not able to keep up. And if you are keeping up, it's because you are sacrificing other things like your health, your family, your relationships, your friendships, all kinds of things on the altar of caring for these other people. I think that we take onto ourselves things that God has not asked us to take on. We do this all the time, don't we? We take onto ourselves things that God has not asked us to take on. God is not asking you to carry the burden of thousands of people, even 10 people. God wants for you to bring those people to Him. So you need to get other people to speak, get other people to preach, get other people to help, get other people to counsel, get other people to teach, get other people to lead, get other people to help you. If not, you will die. And also one day you will die. And so what's the plan when you die? Who's going to be taking over? Who's going to be overseeing different ministries? One of the things that we do in our church is that we give new roles to people often. And it's just the reality that who knows what's going to happen? Who knows how long someone's going to be here in this city or in this place? And so we're constantly mixing up our staff team. We're giving new roles, new understandings, new opportunities to see people thrive and not thrive in different realities. So you're going to die. That's encouraging, isn't it? But this is one of the reasons you need to develop a community of leaders. And the last reason is you just need to give people a shot. Give people a shot at leading. Jesus said, come follow me. Come follow me. And he gave men and women an opportunity to lead. Some people that in fact, most of his followers were people that weren't seen as competent, capable leaders in their day, at least by the religious officials. None of them were rabbis. So religiously, they didn't make it. They didn't make the cut. Maybe they didn't memorize Leviticus well enough. I don't know. But we have to give people a shot. Let people lead before they're ready to be leaders. And I don't mean you give them the church and hey, good luck. but let them lead in smaller areas. Let them fail. Give them safe places to fail so that when they fail, you can be walking with them. You can help them understand what to do differently. You can be their coach. You can be walking alongside them. This is how Jesus did ministry. He allowed for people to fail in front of him, not so he could be like, I told you, I knew you were going to fail. I knew you were going to stink at this, but so that he could encourage them and redirect them and help them understand what they should be doing next time that this happens. So will you give people a chance to fail? Has anyone ever invested in you in a way where they just let you fail? They let you lead in places that you probably had no right to be leading. When I first became a Christian, real follower of Jesus, my pastor sat down with me, and this was a few weeks into it, and he said, hey, I think that you should help out with the youth group. I'm like, I don't think you want me helping out with the youth group. I was saved when I was in university, and it was part of a fraternity. You can imagine all the things that go along with that. And he said, hey, I'd love for you to work with the youth. I'm like, don't think it's going to happen. He's like, no, I absolutely want you to work with the youth. I'm going to be there. There's some other leaders. Just come work with the youth. And I did. And I started working with the youth, although I didn't think that was a good idea. And he gave me opportunities to lead. He gave me opportunities to teach. He gave me an opportunity to preach. I was a 9-month-old Christian, and he gave me an opportunity to preach. Like, crazy. He let me have opportunities to fail and then help me follow up. And that instilled in me something. I want to let other people lead and let them fail and then be there with them when they do fail so that we can help talk about how to make things different. Now, people in your church, if they just want a nice, professional, smooth, clean-cut thing, they won't put up with that. But that's not really the church, is it? The church is a place that we understand the failures of others. We understand that we're going to offend one another, and we're going to need to forgive one another. We're going to not lead things the way all the time that we wish that they were led, but we have to let people make mistakes and cut their teeth, in a sense, in ministry. And so this is really important to give people a shot to lead and a shot to fail. So that's our session. Let me finish by asking a few questions. How will you invest in leaders practically? How are you going to lead, and how are you going to invest in leaders practically? You have to come up with something that works for you and for the leaders. If you're going to have bivocational leaders and not everyone's going to be on staff, which is our reality, then you're going to need to figure out, how am I going to invest in leaders in a way that it's not burdensome, You have to invest in them, though. You see, Paul, when he talks to the Thessalonians, he said that I shared my life with you. I shared my life with you. Not just words, not just dropping a letter once in a while, but I shared my very life with you. And you can't get around sharing your life with people. You can't systematize people. You can't put them into an automated email program. You just can't do that. That's not the way that ministry gets done. We shouldn't be sending videos like this to our leaders, and that's the only interaction we have with them. It's not how ministry is done. Jesus shared his life. Paul shared his life. We must be sharing our lives with our leaders. They must see faults in you and in me. So what are the rhythms that you're going to set up for leadership development? See, your rhythms could either cause immense growth in people, or it could hinder growth, because you're suffocating all of the leadership opportunities and potential. Here, our rhythms are not perfect. You don't need to use these. But with all of our leaders, we meet with them 3 times every 2 months. So 3 times every 2 months, we're together with our leaders. And we do a one-on-one or one-on-two coaching that's more pastoral in nature, finding out what's going on with them. We also do a group coaching, so we batch our leaders into smaller groups, and we're doing more peer learning and care with them. And then we do an all leaders meeting, and that's 6 times a year. And so every other month we're doing that. So 3 times every 2 months, these 3 rhythms are taking place. And it's just enough, not too much. Like if it was more, it would just feel overwhelming to have 2 meetings a month. But 3 meetings every 2 months we found has been very helpful. And we keep them short, 45 minutes to an hour for the one-on-one and the group, and that we're like right to the point of what we're doing. And then the all leaders we're trying to do in about an hour and a half to 2 hours. We want people to share a bit more, but we're very pointed and specific in what we're communicating. So here's the big idea. The calling is to develop disciples who will make disciples until Jesus comes back. The calling is to develop disciples who will make disciples of Jesus until Jesus comes back. And so as you're thinking about planting a church, you need to think about planting a church with leaders that you're investing in. Are the leaders that you're forming, are the leaders that you are forming able to keep going when you aren't there? Or is it all reliant on you? Make your church plant as non-dependent on you as possible, as fast as you can. Right? Make it as non-dependent on you as is possible and as fast as you can. Let people do things when you're not there. Strategically set up times for people to do things when you're not there, and then process with them after. So who is one person? Who is one person that you can start developing right now? One person. Who is it? I would say write it down, type it out, remind yourself, I'm going to start investing in this person as a leader. You don't even need to be a church planner to do that. Who is one person, just one, that you are developing and investing your life into? And we have resources to help you do that. So you can go on acts29canada.com/the calling, and we have resources called Foundations of Gospel Living, and Essentials of Spiritual Leadership. And these are tools that you can be working with someone one-on-one or in a group setting, but will help you invest your life in them. Also, if you're interested in being trained to be a church planner, it's like a seminary education, but it's all done within the confines of your local church. And so if you're interested in that, if you're a pastor that want to train church planners in your church, or if you're a church planner that wants to be trained in your church, then you can fill out that form on the site, let us know, and we'll talk to you more about that. And in the last session, session 6, we'll be talking at greater length about what that looks like. So thank you so much. Let me pray for you, and we'll be done with our session. Lord, thank you that you want us to develop disciples who are leaders. In fact, if we're followers of Jesus, we're all leaders. We love you. We thank you for being a great God. We need you for everything. We are insufficient in and of ourselves. Thank you, Spirit, that you are the counselor that lives in us and is active and moving. So I pray for these men and women as they're processing through what's the next step for me, and I pray that you would raise up many church planners across Canada. We love you. Amen.